Welcome back to Operator Syndrome. We're here. We're full disclosure. We're re-recording an episode that we did maybe like 2 weeks ago. So not that we're going to try to recreate it. This
Right.
has happened before. We'll wing it like we usually do. But if you hear us reference something we thought we talked about before, that's all. That's all it is.
Yeah.
Um, so the last episode you all would have heard is Steve talking about his time at the Pentagon, arriving at the Pentagon, what his arrangement was coming in as a reservist, um, and and talking about some of the spotlight that you felt while you were there. Um, I think we best characterize today's episode as having to do with some of the unforeseen friction that maybe you wouldn't have expected to experience there at the Pentagon as a team guy stepping
Yeah.
into the chaplain role. I think I can speak on behalf of most folks who have been, enlisted at the tactical level and say, well, that seems like a no-brainer. A
Yeah.
chaplain
Yeah.
with relatable experience is, I mean, that would be a great asset to have. But as we'll hear today, and I'll turn it over to you, that wasn't always the same perspective that they had up there at the Pentagon. So,
Yeah.
um, over to you. What I mean, what was what's the first kind of inkling you had that maybe they felt differently.
Yeah. Right. That's putting it nicely. Yeah. Felt a little differently. Yeah. I'd like to start by saying there were a good number of chaplains that had no they were totally easy to get along with, and there was no friction, and they didn't have any uh issues with my having been a combat veteran, much like
Hmm.
a SEAL. And a lot of them just really dug it, and I made friends with several people around my rank level that we'd go to lunch together and have a beer together after work and just really hit it off. There were some, however, who there were some chaplains, and most of them were senior chaplains, like way up there, like O6s or O5s
Hmm.
and O6s, who looked at me. I don't know anybody's motives, and I never would pretend to guess anybody's motives. But all I can do is deal with the way they treat me and the things they say. And I think, well, I don't exactly know where this is coming from. But for example, I had about three different chaplains come up to me and ask me about my feelings about wearing combat insignia on my uniform. Okay. Um, don't know really where to start with that. Obviously, there's several layers of it. With when you're in the military and you're experienced at looking at uniforms, I've said it before, it's like a resume. You can tell where you've been, what you've done. You can tell a lot about a person from their uniform. Maybe not BDUs, but when you're wearing a khaki uniform with ribbons and insignia, it says a lot more. And in the chaplain corps, as I think I also mentioned, they're non-combatant. So we're the one officer in all of the military who is forbidden to carry a weapon. I mean, it you can't do it. It's against policy. Um, and I've said, if you're in a combat zone, you have people assigned to kind of protect you, so to speak. But you're supposed to be. And so the kind of the theology behind it is you're a man of the cloth, not of the sword, so to speak. And so there's this hesitancy to try to do anything that's combat related or project yourself as combat related, much less carry a weapon. There's this whole orb. Now, having said that, I've seen many times when chaplains couldn't wait to kind of get cool guide up with some combat units and go outside the wire and do stuff like that,
Hmm.
because I think part of it is it's exciting. It's on some level, depending on where you're going outside the wire, it's exciting and it's cool and you feel like a tough guy. I mean, as a chaplain, you're not exactly thought of as the toughest toughest of the rungs on the ladder, because you're a man of God. You know, you pray, you give communion, you do those kind of things. You're not out there, busting heads and shooting it up. And that's fine. It's like no big deal.
Hmm.
That's a great thing to do. That's a great calling.
Hmm.
But when you go from being like a serious combat experience veteran, like what I did in the SEALs, and then go into the chaplain corps, that is about the most radical change you could probably make within the military. Maybe there's some others out there that I haven't thought of, but that's a big one. And I always got that when people, even civilians, would say, "Man, what a change!" I mean, that is night and day difference. And it's like, yeah, well, it is, because we change, we grow, we do things differently sometimes in life.
Right.
I never worried, I never had a problem with it, but I got the vibe that other people did. So, for example, a couple of these senior officers, or two or three, I can't honestly remember, had stopped me, and said, "What do you? How do you feel about wearing combat designators on your uniform?" And I thought about it. I wanted to take it seriously, and I thought, well, I don't. I haven't thought much about it at all. This is my uniform, and this is my history. So, I mean, I'm not ashamed of it, if that's what you're asking. I didn't. I said it very kindly. I'm just a senior officer. I'm not going to smart
Hmm.
off to him. Um, but I said, why wouldn't I wear? I said, well, I think I asked counter questions. I always found that's a good way to deal with tension, is to say, oh, okay, because it makes it open ended. You don't start pitting sides and getting in these postures like, okay, we're coming at it from like a headbutting point of view. So I said,
Hmm.
well, okay, so what would you have me take off my uniform? And one of them said, well, the Trident. And I'm like, okay, so I don't wear the Trident anymore. That wouldn't, you think that has a conflict of interest with being a chaplain? And he said, yeah, I think it's just, we're not combatants, and we don't want to project that image. I was like, well, I guess my airborne wings would need to go as well, right? I mean, I don't know too many people who aren't combat. If you have airborne wings, it's somehow combat related. I can't think of a way it's not. I mean, maybe somebody gets a good deal, ROTC or something,
Right.
but yeah, usually it's combat related. He
It's a
said, well,
it's a capability, right? It's a
yeah,
combat capability.
combat capability.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. And so I'm like, well, okay, so the jump wings, he goes, oh, he hadn't really, he was focused on the Trident.
Hmm.
So he goes, huh, well, I guess so. Like, okay. So I take off my Navy achievement with Valor, because you don't know, you earn those in combat. And he goes, well, I'm like, do I just take the V off of it? And he's like, I don't know. I said, well, what about my combat action room? I guess that's got to go. And then he started to see the kind of his logic was fuzzy, I think. And I think he saw it. He was like, well, I had to have to think about that. And I'm like, okay, cool. I said, I'm not, I did tell him, I said, well, I'm proud of my background in the military and my service. And I'm not trying to hide anything about myself. If there's something if there's something so drastic about my serving as a SEAL, and it needs to be concealed in a way that I don't show that I was a combat vet, I think there's a bigger issue at work, if there really is an issue here. And he kind of just said, yeah, I don't know. We went our separate ways, but it happened a couple of times. I think, but what I felt like asking him, I didn't. I don't want to be an asshole. I don't want to be a good person.
You're a chaplain, for God's
Yeah, I'm a
sake.
chaplain. Yeah, right. Although I've met some chaplains that I wondered about what their posture is. But anyway, no, anyhow, most of them are just fantastic and down to earth and good people. But I felt like asking him, well, if you had a Trident, would you wear it or take it off of your uniform?
Hmm.
Because I have a sneaking suspicion that they might have worn it. Because I'm very proud of it. I don't make any apologies for that. I'm not saying it's perfect. I'm not saying I'm Superman or anything. It's just I put a lot of blood, sweat, and tears into getting that badge. So anyway, there was that, and I think it was just a little bit of envy. I think a little bit of jealousy,
Hmm.
because I'm even high ranking people in the chaplain corps. I had like 3 times as many ribbons as people who had been there their whole career. and it's no big deal. I don't care. I didn't. I just got the ribbons because somebody put me in for them. I didn't go begging for them.
Hmm.
You do your time and you get them. That's the way it is. But yeah, I just think there was a little angst. Put it that way.
I think I mentioned it in other episodes, but in my time, we had plenty of chaplains come through who had um, been
Yeah.
infantrymen before, been rangers before, or
Yeah.
something else.
Yeah.
That wasn't all that strange. And in the way the army does badges, we do like the Boy Scout method. So we have like a badge per,
Yeah.
for every little thing.
Yeah.
So and when you get into special operations units on the army side, um, there's a lot more money, there's a lot more time. It's sort of the standard to go to as many schools as you can, so it isn't that strange to see,
Yeah.
at least in my time, to have seen, badged out chaplains.
Yeah.
Not that it was expected, but it wasn't strange at all. And
Right.
again, to the layperson, to the E4, E5, whatever that's working, you'd that would be a you'd think of that as a benefit, right?
Yeah.
Someone that can relate to what I'm going
Yeah.
through, that understands. Um, I think your story shows chaplains are definitely people too,
Yeah.
right? Subject to
Yeah.
all the
Yeah.
subject to all the feeling, and to stress the point you made, it was probably like 95% of people you interacted with were cool, and it's
Yeah.
always a couple folks who have something weird,
Yeah.
some weird feelings about things, but those do stick out, and um, especially when it just doesn't make a lot of sense. It's like
Yeah.
you're telling me to take you're seriously comfortable enough telling me that I should take this thing off,
Off.
this thing
Yeah.
I earned off because you don't have one? I think maybe there is, like, an honest thread there to talk about what
Hmm.
it means, right? If you
Yeah.
have but I also think, and I can't remember if we talked about this last time, but it's like you're a chaplain in the military.
Yeah.
Everyone's job, like, the core function of the military is to close with
Yeah.
and destroy the enemies of the blah 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 of the United
Right.
States, right? So it's like,
Yeah.
well, so then how do you feel about everybody else then? If it
Yeah.
Right? How do you feel about the job
Yeah.
that everyone is here to do? Like,
Right.
we're here to pull the trigger, press the button to fire the missile, shoot the
Exactly.
torpedo, drop the bomb, like that's what we do here,
Yeah. If you're coming from a pacifistic angle,
Right,
like it is a sin to be involved in any form of combat, and
right.
there are religious groups that believe that. The Amish
Mhm,
believe that. Some Mennonite groups believe that.
mhm,
They are conscientious objectors by their theology.
mhm.
Okay, but you shouldn't be serving in the military. Now, if that's your ball of wax, good.
Mhm,
But don't come pretending everything's groovy when you're
mhm,
opposed to this whole system that is designed to destroy enemies. Let's be frank about it. What else are we
mhm.
there to do?
Right.
But so yeah, that's a really good point. And another thing I wanted to say too, because it just jogged what you were saying about the army. Well, I did notice I didn't have much interaction with the Air Force chaplains, but Army chaplains I did because of a connection that I'll get to and maybe probably the next episode where there's a command called JSOC, and I was working with JSOC in different capacities, just say it that way. And they have Army chaplains. And Navy chaplains, but mostly it's Army chaplains at JSOC, and I got to rub shoulders, and they were really helpful in a very difficult time that I went through. And some of the senior guys, chaplains at JSOC, and they were Army chaplains, were really good mentors and helpful to me at a time when I needed help. We all did. But what I noticed was a huge cultural difference between Navy chaplains and Army chaplains. I
Mm,
mean, it was almost as stark as we've talked about the cultural differences between, well, Army and Navy in general. We
mhm.
just have different vibes, different ways we roll, different vocabularies. And it was I really liked working with the Army chaplains, honestly. They, maybe we can get into it down the way, but just the cultural differences were noticeable.
I mean, are there any top, like, high
Hmm.
level ones that stick out to you that
Different differences.
Yeah,
Um,
from a cultural perspective.
uh, yeah, let me think, man. I hope that's a kind of a stumper. I've noticed all these things, but I try
You
to,
just knew that
yeah,
you seemed to like the way they did
yeah,
their job. Something
yeah.
about the way they were doing it.
Um, I think, okay, I think, and this may be too vague, but it's honestly what I was thinking at the time. They seem to be a lot more, the Army chaplains seem to be a lot more plugged into how a soldier thinks.
Hmm.
Um, because that's all they're dealing with mostly is soldiers, infantrymen or special, whatever, on whatever
Hmm.
level. The
Hmm.
Navy is a different culture in part because other than fighter pilots and SEALs, I mean, SWIC guys, that's part of special warfare. You're not doing a lot of hands-on fighting on the ground, boots on the ground fighting.
Okay.
You're on a ship, or you're technical. You're operating computer screens. I mean, you may be sending out munitions and fires that are going to target something, but you're more of kind of in a geek mode. You know,
Okay.
you're on a ship. I'm not nothing. I'm not knocking it. I'm just saying, I'm a geek on 100 levels. Look at all my books, but
Yeah. No, I
but
know what you're saying.
yeah, so I think that Army chaplains now, and there may have been a difference now that I think about it with Navy chaplains who served for a long time with Marine units. I'll
Mm.
bet you they had a lot more uh, buy-in with the average foot soldier because, but a lot of Navy chaplains are just on a base and wherever, and they're just doing services at a base chapel. They're not doing anything really combat related. And even the people they're serving, most of the time,
Hmm.
are sailors who are maybe swabbing decks or
Hmm.
running cryptographic equipment or something like that.
Hmm.
So I think that it's a long-winded way of saying I think that the Army chaplains, by and large, and there's plenty of exceptions, were more in tune with the way an infantryman thought and felt and the pressures therein and all that. That I just felt that they were more dialed into that lifestyle.
Okay. That makes
Yeah,
sense.
yeah,
Um, so okay, so you're working there, you get some chaplain drive-bys.
yeah, yeah,
So chaplain drive-bys about your uniform, um, but it sounds like you made a big impact while you were there from the last episode, and what I remember from what we recorded before on
yeah,
this one.
yeah,
So it sounded like you made a big impact, but you weren't doing what you had come in to do, right?
yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I just wanted, yeah, like I said before, I just wanted to be with the troops. I wanted to be where people were in harm's way. Maybe I could do some good on some level there. And so through the course of things, I got to know the detailer, which I've talked about. The detailer is the person that puts people where all over the place in the Navy. And the reserve detailer is different from the active duty detailer, but I think he was in 05. Oh, maybe 06, now that I think about it. Yeah, he was in 06, or he made 06, I think. And he and I became, pretty on not a first name basis. I mean, he's a sir to me, but we were pretty about as casual as you could be for a junior officer with a senior officer. And we got along well, and my name always kind of came up to the top of his stack just because I was a SEAL. He came all the way out to the NOSC to meet me one time. He didn't have any business there other than he wanted to meet a SEAL chaplain. He like flew out there, and I was honored. I mean, heck yeah. I mean, and especially knowledgeable because he knew a lot about manpower and about billeting and all that, and I didn't know diddly squat when it comes to the chaplain corps. So I was just taking notes the whole time, and he said, "Well, you've got because of your background," and he was one that was on the side of, "Boy, we've got a unique skill set here that we need to put in the right place." That was his thinking, um, and I appreciated that. And he's the one that got me to the Pentagon in the first place, which was really unique. There was only two reserve chaplain billets in that whole office. And I was one of the two, and I was right out of chaplain basics. So it was like, whoa, how did, I got a lot of friends from the chaplain school going, how did you end up working for the chief of Navy chaplains? I'm like, I don't know. Weird stuff happens in this world.
Mm-hmm.
So he anytime something real significant would come up, he would contact me directly and say, are you interested in a mobilization uh going here or there? And the other thing I had to say about mobilizations, um in the reserves, you really need to mobilize a few times or a couple times so that you can show you're going downrange to do what you're in the reserves to do, to support the active duty troops wherever they need support. And but there were a lot of people in the reserves, not just chaplains, but a lot of reservists I met that were like, they did not want to deploy. They just wanted to have their coffee and get their money on weekends and not go anywhere. They had other jobs, they had families. They were just like, it was, and not to mention you could be in harm's way depending on where you're stationed.
Sure.
And they didn't want to go. They were just kind of trying to, I guess, kind of hide, And nothing for me. I wanted to go, and so this detailer said, "Well, not only after this is after he had me at the Pentagon working for the chief, and he said, well, there's something's come up, and they're requested that you go to another command called Dev Group, Naval Special Warfare Development Group, which is, we all know, the special team, the special mission unit for the Navy. We've talked about that a lot. And it's a very selective process. I mean, they have a selection process for everybody, not just the operators who are going there, but everybody from civilian workers who work in the travel office to chaplains to supply people. I mean, they want the best at that command. And it's like that on the Army side too. You don't just go waltzing in there. It's, we're going to look at you up and down and make sure we want you on our team. Like I say, even if you're in a support mode, because it's just, they were really high standards. They really do. Which is great. So he said, there's a selection process coming up for a chaplain at Dev Group, an augmentee to go to mobilize for, it was a year, and to help to assist the command chaplain at Dev Group. And he was a really good guy. I really got along with him. I really liked him. Oh man, you know what? He was former Marine. Now that I remember it, he was a former Marine chaplain. That's right. So there was enough, and it's no surprise he ended up there, right? A former combat guy, because you're dealing with not just combat people, but high caliber combat people, high
Sure.
caliber men.
Right.
So yeah, so I said, yeah, I'd love it. I'd love to go. And I even knew there were guys I went through buds with who were there serving, and I was like, I'd love to go back. And at least in remember, the whole reason I got into the chaplain corps, well, one of the big reasons was I wanted to see if I could help out with special warfare and our SEALs who were hurting and their families and so forth. So he said, okay, well, I'll set it up. And I had to fly out to Virginia Beach and go through a whole, oh man, it was very similar to the process I went through when I got orders to Dev Group as an operator, as a field operator, way back when, without the combat aspect of it. It was, but the psychological profiles we had to fill out, the Wonderlic test, all these batteries of like, is your head screwed on right? You got to interview with a psychologist. And they haven't had a PT test where a run, swim, push up, pull up. It was like a buds test, kind of, but for a chaplain. And if you can imagine, and I'm kind of laughing at it all, but it was whatever. That's what they wanted to do.
Mm-hmm.
And we even had to run the obstacle course, which is a hilarious thing.
That's so,
Because yeah,
it's so strange. I mean,
it's very strange.
I remember this from the last time, and I kind of let it slide. But that's so strange to make your chaplain do the O course. I it's strange, bordering on like silly, like
Yeah,
silly. This is like silly strange. Like, hey, yeah, okay, we need chaplains. Hey, what if we made him do the O course?
yeah,
That'd
yeah,
be funny, right? Huh, 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 huh.
yeah. Well, you're right. but let me say this in defense of the larger
Of
command.
course. Of
It
course.
was the chaplains who came up with that. Devgru didn't care about any of that.
That
Chaplains wanted something cool guy tough to get through. So they made
there
it. It did not come from Dev Group.
they
I
were
mean,
like the
people
chaplain.
working, people working in the travel office are not going to have to run the obstacle course. It's the I don't know what Chaplain came up with. They're like, yeah, we need a vetting process.
They'll
You're a
respect us
real
more.
chaplain.
Yeah, they'll respect us more if we do a I don't even how what's a long ocean swim? I don't know. I was gonna make it like 3 mile ocean swim. Is that a
No,
thing? I don't know.
no, we just had to go a couple laps in the pool or something. But it was silly. It was silly, and I was thinking that the whole time. Like, man, what are we doing here?
What
Shouldn't we be reciting Bible verses or something? Like being quizzed on books of the gospel, or I don't know.
that yeah, that's that's funny. Okay,
Yeah.
so you do that.
So it
You,
did that, and
yeah,
there was one other guy. There was one billet
right.
that we were competing for, and there was one other guy who I, he was former combat too, Navy chaplain, and I don't know if I don't think he was in combat, but he was with the combat unit. I don't think he was older than me, and he wasn't in the Gulf War. I'm pretty sure. And yeah, he didn't have combat action, but he was in an infantry unit in the Army previously, and he was older and a little bit out of shape. Not he was in pretty good shape, but he wasn't in my shape, and I wasn't in SEAL shape at the time. I was 40 whatever 6 or something. So I was past my prime, but I just like smoked all of this stuff. I mean, I'm just like kind of it's just man, I've done it all my life. And we were out having dinner or something afterwards because I really liked him, really down to earth guy. And he said, "Man, I really wanted to get this spot, and I thought I had a shot at it. And I got here, and I look at your uniform, and I'm like, oh, of all the people I got to compete with for this spot, and I don't know why they chose me over him. I think it probably because the community accepted me, but
Mhm.
there was a little bit more. So I got the job, I got the position and for the mobilization at Dev Group, and
Well, I mean, we can acknowledge that I mean, you being you having, been a SEAL before
yeah,
is, of course, you perform well. You were not insane after all the tests. It's the same way, like, if there's, like, a ranger who were to come through for something, I mean like, that's gonna be how are you not gonna choose the person from your
right,
tribe, right? It's
yeah,
like, how are you not going to? That's how any network works, right? Like, West
yeah.
Pointers choose West Pointers, Naval Academy, they're gonna choose SEALs, of course, they're gonna choose you. Of course, you earned it, but it doesn't hurt. It definitely didn't hurt.
It didn't hurt. And the other thing is too that I I I had a lot of street cred with those guys. And
Mhm, for
that
sure.
even the command chaplain at the time when I was checking in, going from department to department, you have to go through this checklist of like, all right, you got to go to this department and find out about that. And he was going around with me, kind of showing me the ropes. Um, I didn't know where anything was. It's a huge place. It's not a small command, and so we went to the air department, and this gets back into that kind of maybe a little bit of envy, maybe a little bit of oh damn it, why are you getting special treatment here?
Mhm.
So we were checking in an air department, and uh the guys were like, "Oh, holy crap, team guy Chaplin, no way." I'm like, well, takes all kinds, I'm glad to be here. And they really, I gotta say, the SEALs at this command welcomed me with open arms. I thought they'd think, "What are you, some kind of turncoat? When were you in? You're an old dinosaur fart." But they were like really cool, and they're like, it's great to have you," and this is something that I think that detailer saw the potential of because there was a lot of street cred, and they were way more willing to engage with me on a number of levels, whether they're having trouble or whether they just wanted to shoot the breeze or whatever, because I was one of them on at least the brotherhood level, we call it,
Mhm.
part of the brotherhood. I don't think I've ever mentioned that in past episodes, but for listeners who don't know, we call it the brotherhood in the teams, meaning the SEAL teams, as well as other uh, labels like team guys and stuff like that. So, um, so they invited me. They said, "Hey, you should go free falling with us." And I was like, "Oh, yeah, I'd love to." I said, "I'm going to need a refresher course because it's been a long time, and that's dangerous stuff, really." They're like, "Oh, no problem, no problem. Next time we go out to Arizona, we'll take you with us, and we'll put you through a refresher course and teach you the new rigs and all this, and we'll jump." I'm like, hot dog, because it's fun. I mean, free falling is fun. Static line jumping is not fun. But anyhow, I was like, yeah, okay, cool. Shook hands. And I left, and then well, I mean, these are his literal words. The chaplain who I was serving under, the command chaplain, he goes, "I hate you." I'm like, "What'd I do?" And he said, "They've never even asked me to come up when they're jumping, and they're asking you to go out and free fall with them." He goes, I can't believe it." And I'm like,
He's
"Well,
got to work it right. He could be like,
yeah,
anybody want to get blessed off on before you guys make this jump? Did
yeah,
you? I've never. I don't think I ever asked this last time. Were you? A lot of things happen, so it would make sense that you wouldn't have had the opportunity. Did you ever have the opportunity to jump with them while you were
no,
there? No.
no." And that'll get into this next chapter. We'll tell
Right.
whatever future episode. Everything went to hell in a handbasket real quick. I mean,
Mhm.
the week I reported on board, that's a whole story of its own.
Mhm.
So, no, um, yeah, but yeah, that was, there was this whole, and when I was there, I saw that the chaplain and some of the other chaplains who had served, they actually had chaplains also at the Naval Special Warfare groups, group one and group two. There may be more groups than that now. I don't know. Back then there was group one and group two, one on the West Coast, two on the East Coast. And they had one or two chaplains or more. And some of those guys, I don't remember any female chaplains. There may be, or maybe now there are. But at the time there was a few that I rubbed shoulders with. And they would go downrange with the regular SEAL teams, the non national mission unit team,
Mhm.
and wanted to go outside the wire and do all this stuff. And the more I heard about it, the more I didn't like it, honestly.
Mm.
I really didn't like it. I'm not faulting them or judging them, but from an operator standpoint, uh, and this is where I think I had an insight that maybe, oh yeah, this is cool. We went out with a bunch of SEALs, so they're going to tell their friends they went out with a bunch of SEALs on a, outside the wire, which is dangerous for
Mhm.
starters. I never liked it because I thought, they're putting assets at risk. Yeah. And they're
Mhm.
putting themselves at unnecessary risk. They can't even carry a gun. I mean, who knows? Maybe they slipped them a gun and they took it with them, but they're not supposed to. And potentially compromise missions. I mean, think about it. If let's see this chaplain out on patrol with a combat unit gets hit. It could
Mhm.
happen, right?
Mhm.
But now you got another casualty that can bog the whole thing or cause an abort mission or something that, I mean, it could possibly happen. I don't think it did, and I'm thankful for that. But it just, to me, that's not smart operating.
Mhm.
Putting assets in risk that don't even need to be there. Come on, what's your job?
I can definitely see your perspective,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
I think it's like, I think it's a reflection of you having done it as a job, as like a professional, because you are categorizing assets and liabilities, and I mean, when you've only got those 2 options, it seems clear. You're a liability, right? One less gun, you're not carrying anything, or maybe they should. Hey, chaps, can you carry this ladder?
Yeah.
But but is that even right that they're carrying? So, that's maybe an individual decision. But I could see how, also not agreeing. I could see how a chaplain, again being a human being, could
Yeah.
succumb to the allure.
Mhm.
because that's like what drove as young men. That's what
Yeah.
drove us to join, right? It's like this,
Right.
the adventure, the unknown. What is this combat thing?
Yeah, for
The
sure.
ultimate test. And then for those who are so close but not, not SEALs or infantrymen or Marines, Rangers, whatever. Um, it's got like being that close, like it's gotta stir
Sure.
something. I gotta
I get
imagine. Um,
I get that.
yeah. Not right, like, not faulting them,
No,
but seeing
no.
how seeing how they could feel that way. Yeah, that's 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 interesting. Um, so we're coming up on time here. I think when we come back around to you, and so um, you said you'd only been there a couple weeks or so before, before the crash. Is that is that right?
5 days from when I
5 days. Okay.
yeah, yeah,
So, it seems like we're gonna get back into that, in the next one. So, yeah, and I know there's a lot to say around that. So,
yeah.
okay, everyone, thanks for listening, and we will catch you in the next one.